Supervisor Kavanaugh.
Here.
Chairman McClure. Vice Chairman Surtee, the only person that we have on the line right now is going to be, who just joined the meeting?
Good morning.
Good morning. Chairman, you are now in the hearing room.
All right.
And we do have a quorum, so we'll get started. Discussion disapproval of fiscal year 2022-23 property tax levies and rates. Angeline, if you'll explain what we're going to be doing.
Good morning, Vice Chair Surtee, members of the board. Angie Woods. I'm the Director of the Office of Budget and Finance for the county. Today, I have an agenda item before you to adopt the levies and rates in accordance with ARS 42-1751 and 42-1754. ARS 4217254 states that the County Board of Supervisors shall assess the amount of taxes that is certified as having been levied for taxing jurisdictions by the, this year it's Monday, so we're doing our meeting today since we have a special session. So essentially, we have collected all of the tax levy and rates for every jurisdiction in the county, and you are approving those rates to be billed to property holders in the state, or in the county, excuse me. I do have a short presentation if you're so inclined to hear that presentation. It's a comparison of where we are with our rates and levies in comparison to other counties in the state, but that's entirely up to the board.
I would like you to explain, when this came before us before, actually was a no vote on it, and there really can't be no votes because we don't set these rates. I was displeased that they're just automatically passed on, and I think that because of the way the Arizona Constitution is made up, there's automatic rate increases, and we're in a recession now, and I wanted to send a message like, what if we have 5, 6, 10 years in a row of recession and they're automatically going up? So I wish the state legislature would take up that rates can be reduced instead of automatically increased. So but that's not up to this board to decide, so we will be okaying whatever that they've put into
That's correct. If I may, what you're doing administratively today is really approving or certifying that we've received all of the documentation from taxing jurisdictions within the county, and you're certifying those rates, and we will be then passing those along to our treasurer's office to put together those tax bills.
Okay.
You have no really, this is administrative, no really authority to change any of those tax rates. That was the duty of those boards that adopted those rates.
Supervisor Miller, do you think we should see that presentation, or do you think it's self-explanatory?
Well, I'd like to make a comment. If
Okay,
I may.
go ahead.
Vice Chair Surtee. And I probably shared a lot of the same kinds of frustrations, having been here for 9 years now, and it has been the charge of me and my colleagues over the years to bring the rate down of the one that we have the control of, which is the property tax rate for Pinal County. And so I just, I want to say that I understand the positives of trying to bring that rate down, and I think we've been pretty good about doing that. I can't remember where I started at, what the rate was when I first took office, but it's down significantly. And I think that I'll keep that in mind going forward on any decisions as we go forward with tax rates. So I just wanted to share that with you. How many slides is it, Andy?
There are 12 slides, but I can also bring this back in a work session item, it's really for your discussion and review, just to look at it from a strategic standpoint, so we can do this at a later meeting. The actual presentation piece, the adoption of the tax levy and rates for the jurisdictions is a must for today, but I can bring that item back for review.
The agenda is pretty light, so this would save us time in the future. So I'd say, in the air of transparency, let's go ahead and look at that then.
Perfect.
And
Thank you.
someone on the phone should probably mute. That's better.
Perfect, thank you. So we do this presentation on an annual basis when we're doing the adoption of the tax levy and rates. Really, we're looking at it because we have a strategic priority for financial strength. And one of the objectives of the strategic goal is to lower the property tax rate, which we've been doing over we started this about fiscal year 10-11, and so we've done that through those years. And this presentation is really to show you what we've done from that standpoint, and get kind of some feedback of where we're going and that type of thing. So first, we'll take a look at last year's countywide average rates. This is produced by the Arizona Department of Revenue in their final abstract. We don't get this data until usually it's probably December, January timeframe. They take some time to gather all of the data from each jurisdiction, compile that, and put out a final abstract. In this abstract, you can see that our primary rate is for the entire county. Every jurisdiction is on average about $11.20. The secondary rates are $3.57, and total rate is $14.77, which is the highest combined primary and secondary. On the secondary, we are 10th out of 15. I will say that our averages, in comparison, the total average last year for the county was 1481, so total averages were coming down. But as a county, we can only affect so much of that total rate. Does that make sense? And then you can see that on here I have several years state averages, and you can see that state averages over the last 4 years are actually declining. So let's talk a little bit about the county's primary property tax rate. And if you simply just look at the levy, you could see that the levy has increased. And it's increased about $8.8 million. But what you don't see there, well, I guess you do if you take a look at the population. The population has increased about 62,500 people, thereabouts. And of that 62,500 people, about 25,000 of those are unincorporated populations. So those that are, say, in Santan Valley, those that are not in a city jurisdiction. Okay, so which that means that puts a heavier burden on the county because we're providing those services for those 25,000 new citizens in the county. With that being said, that $8.8 million, if we were just to take a look at that $8.8 million and said, we have 62,500 people that were added, really per person, we're only adding $140 per year to our tax rate for that additional population. In previous discussions, we I think it was at the tentative budget, we talked about inflation and what inflation does to our resources. And at that point in time, I think I talked about the $102 million in today's dollars is really $131 million. So in both the amount of population that we've increased and inflation, the effect of taxes, we're actually lowering taxes, even though that tax levy has increased.
Supervisor Surdy?
Yes.
Vice Chair Surdy, may I make a comment?
Sure.
And then I actually, back to the slide prior to this, I think just one more thing I'd like to really explain. We, the county, are in charge of the $3.57. The average at where it's at, or countywide at $14. That's all special districts, that's school districts, that's all kinds of other entities that we have very little control over, or virtually none, that the school district can change their rate, and we have no control of that. So, I mean, the $3.57 is what we have control of. And so I just kind of want to touch base on that, because it's such a small percentage that we really do have the authority to have any control. I guess we have on the flood district and some other library districts and some things like that. Pretty small entities that don't move that needle very much. So it's complex in some ways, but also I want everybody to understand that we as a Board of Supervisors don't have as much control over the rate as you might think we do. So thank you for allowing me to point that out.
Thank you for the comments. So moving along, every year we provide you with this graphic that shows if you were to take a dollar bill, what percentage of that dollar bill, or how many cents of that dollar bill is divided amongst categories. So last year when I gave the presentation, we were at 24%. Cities and towns were at 7%. School districts were at 39%. The college district was at 14%, and our special districts were 15%. The major thing that happened this year is the legislature changed the way in which school districts could levy their taxes, which made obviously a huge impact. So they were unable to levy as much, and so that pot got smaller, which changed those percentages. So the effect of our reduction in rate didn't have, as a percentage of the dollar, didn't impact it as much because the school district's total levy went down significantly. And in comparison to 2010, 2011, we're in 2010-11, it was 31 cents, it was 31 cents. So we're still making an effect on that total dollar. So this is a slide that we added. I think we started adding this slide last year, just to show the makeup of the legal classes. So when the assessors go out and do the, look at all of the tax roll, they put each of the properties into one type of legal class. And so legal class 1 is really our commercial properties. Class 2 is mainly agricultural land. Class 3 and 4 is residential. And so you can see that by the net assessed valuation, what percentages each of our legal classes fall. And what's interesting to me, if you look at Yavapai County, the net assessed valuation, or the NAV here on the sheet, is very similar to Pinal County, and the makeup of those legal classes is also very similar. I'm pointing that out specifically because in the next slides, we'll see the differences between Yavapai County and Pinal County, even though our legal classes are similar and our net assessed valuation is similar. Things are different, and it takes a different tax rate or tax levy to fund our government. One other county that I wanted to point out on here, and you're going to see this really directly on the next slide, is Greenlee County is primarily made up of Class 1 type properties, 95% and 5% residential. And it's very interesting in how that, having predominantly Class 1 properties is going to affect based on population. And I'll show you that on the next slide. So here I was talking about Greenlee County. So if you remember, 95% of their net assessed valuation is commercial property. And so the net assessed valuation per capita, because they have very small population, net assessed valuation per capita is the highest in the state. Net assessed valuation per capita is really it's the indicator on how much how much it takes of a levy to what that levy amount is to raise that, or what the rate is to raise a levy. You know, in this case, here again, Pinal County, our net assessed valuation per capita, 7,121, and there again, I wanted to go down to Yavapai County, 13,821. So, which means our population is much greater, even though everything else seemed to be the same with Yavapai County, right? So it takes a higher tax rate to gain the same amount of money, really, per person, okay? So if you were to assume Yavapai County having 2 times the net assessed valuation per capita, you could make the assumption that their rate could simply be twice ours, and everything would be equal. I haven't done a lot of analysis on that. I plan to do that and bring that forward to you probably sometime later, but just wanted to point out that when we look at business class and the net assessed valuation, things don't, because of the number of people here, things don't always mean the same thing.
Supervisor Miller has a comment.
Sure.
Thank you, Vice Chair Surtee. And to that point, I don't want to go too far sideways on this, but the population number that they give us is very, very important, because if that number is up probably closer to what it really is, maybe almost 500,000, that number would go down.
That's correct.
And that's another reason that the census is such an important thing to really understand where we're at. So anyway, just a math observation. Thank you.
And I might further add that this particular calculation has a strong bearing on the way in which our credit ratings agencies rate our county. So as we add more commercial properties, that will make an effect, because commercial properties doesn't come with a lot of population, right? But the valuation of those properties jumps significantly. So as we add more commercial property, we'll see an effect here as well. Any other questions here?
Chairman, if I may, before Angie continues with her presentation, just for the record, we do have Supervisor Goodman on the line now.
Thank you, Natasha. So this slide has a lot going on it. One of the most, we're seeing that now our county, the primary rate is 4th highest in the state, and you can see that we decreased our rate by about 4% this year. You can see other counties doing similar things. And, you know, when we get down to, say, La Paz County, that 30% that they decrease their rate is simply because they are taxing at their max rate. So they can't tax any higher. So they must lower their rate by that 30%. And that's similar situation for some of the other counties. And these, when we put this together, when we look at the combined rates, we did things to, so we weeded out those secondary rates that only include rates that are controlled by the Board of Supervisors, not only here, but in other counties, so that you could look at those secondary rates and really see, you know, in your control what you are doing in comparison to other counties. So here's kind of historic primary property tax rates, and you can see the, you know, 1920 to now and where we've changed. In fiscal year 10-11, our rate was $3.99, so we've reduced from $3.99 down to $3.56, and we're only taxing 62% of what we could be taxing, and we've talked about that in past presentations as well. And then you can see, you know, here over those years how other taxing jurisdictions have done things. Any questions there? Perfect, thank you. So, adopted primary levy per capita, and I talked about this a little bit. Back in 10-11, we were taxing per person to $272 per person. Now we're taxing $254 per person. So we've made a significant decrease to that, really a 7% reduction over that time frame. And we're really ranked 11 at this point in time. So, and we typically bounce around somewhere in that middle range when we talk about primary levy per person. Another thing that was instituted in 2010-11, we looked at the property tax levy burden as a percentage of personal income. So what that means is, can our taxpayers really afford what how we're taxing? And in 2010-11, it was at 1.16%, and that was the very, second highest. Which means that we were putting a heavy burden on our taxpayers. As we've lowered the tax rate and population has increased, personal income has increased, we've been able to lower that to 0.64%. So just the burden is becoming less and less on our taxpayers. And this is really just a summary of all the things that we've talked about. Pinal County's fourth highest primary property tax rate in the state. We have the fourth highest combined property tax rate in the state. Our property tax levy per capita is decreasing. We're $30 lower than the state average, or 13% lower than the state average. We have the second lowest primary NAV per capita. We want to move up that list, so by adding commercial properties, that type of thing will help that. And then lastly, Pinal County has the 11th highest primary property tax burden as a percent of personal income. So, any questions?
Yes. A question.
Thank you, Supervisor Sturdy. Just a question, comment. And on these commercial property, well, on any property, the value is now still taking, what, close to 24 months before it really kind of hits the rolls and we start seeing those values from the assessor's office?
If I may, I would say somewhere between 18 and 24 months. It
Right.
just depends on, when the assessor's office is doing their valuations and that type of thing.
Lots of that stuff doesn't really get assessed until they're completed, C of Os and those types of things. So when you see this commercial development, that it's a delayed reaction. So folks, I think in time, you'll see some of this stuff even correct itself a little bit better on the numbers as it goes forward. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? With that, I request for approval of the tax levy and rate packet that was attached to the agenda item.
Does anyone on the phone have any comments? Hearing none, I would ask for a motion.
Supervisor Surdy, I'll make a motion to approve the fiscal year 2022-2023 property tax levy and rate as presented today.
This is Supervisor McClure. I second.
Okay, we have a second. We're going to do a roll call vote on everything today. So, Natasha?
Supervisor Kavanaugh,
Aye.
Supervisor Goodman,
Aye.
Chairman McClure,
Aye.
Supervisor Miller,
Aye.
Vice Chairman Surdy presiding as chair.
I'm an aye also.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you. Discussion, approval, disapproval of a resolution to cancel the regular elections of August 2nd, which have already happened. Virginia Ross.
Good morning, Vice Chair Surdy, Supervisors, Virginia Ross Elections Director. This item is for the precinct committeemen that file to run as elected precinct committeemen. The filing deadline was April the 4th, and when I became the election director last Thursday, I did a search and found out this item had not been submitted to the board, so I went ahead and put this together. It needs to be approved before the canvass, and I'll take any questions.
Can you explain the lack of candidates and how there's not a challenge to how many of these precinct folks there are?
So each precinct in the county, based on population of registered voters for that party, there's a formula, and each precinct has an allotment of PCs for each party, and PCs are either appointed or filed to run, and if they have, say, for example, 10 people for that slot, if there are 10 or fewer candidates that file to run, then we don't need to put them on the ballot because there's 97 precincts in both parties, so the statute says this is one of the elections that can be canceled, and we only had one race that went on the ballot, and that was Precinct 106. All the rest of them did not exceed their allotment for those parties, so this resolution again is to go ahead and cancel all of those elections because they were not on the ballot for the August 2nd primary.
Okay, so the one that was contested, how does that work itself out?
So that race was on the ballot, and the voters of that precinct, 106, voted, and those results are in the canvass.
Okay. All right, thank you. Is that your whole presentation? Do we have any comments from anyone on the phone? Okay, so I will ask for a motion on this one as well.
Supervisor Vice Chair Surdy, I'll make a motion to approve item number 2 as presented.
Kavanaugh, second.
Okay, we have a second. Natasha, roll call.
Supervisor Kavanaugh,
Aye.
Supervisor Goodman,
Aye.
Chairman McClure,
Aye.
Supervisor Miller,
Aye.
Vice Chairman Surdy presiding as chair.
Aye.
That motion passes unanimously.
Okay, discussion, approval, disapproval of the canvass of the election official results of August 2nd. This is going to be Virginia Ross as well. And Himanshu, but I don't see him. So I believe we're all going to have a lot of comments on this, and we're going to have a roll call vote on this too and explain what it is we're doing. So Kent Volkmer's been explaining this every step of the way. That's now going to be thrust on you. So I, for one, am not satisfied with how the election went, and we're now trying to move forward and repair and do the best we can. And so we have any challenges or anything that happens after this, nothing can happen until we canvass this election. So could you explain that?
I believe I would defer that to our county attorney, Chris Keller.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, as Attorney Volkmer has explained, I think on Wednesday, in fact, we made it clear that in order for a candidate for a specific race to challenge, for example, the votes or the spread of the votes as to who was successful in that race, you need to have a canvass so that the challenger can go ahead and petition, and you have to have a recount. That recount can only happen if, in fact, a canvass is done and it is ordered by the court that a recount is appropriate. So this is kind of one of those situations where you need to be able to have this so you have those numbers so that anybody in a race that might want to challenge has the ability to do that. As far as the canvass goes, as Attorney Volkmer explained previously on Wednesday, the canvassing is essentially certifying the numbers, the types of votes that came in, provisional and so forth, write-ins and the like, and those numbers. And you are statutorily required to have that done within 10 days of the primary. Today is the 10th day, and those are to be submitted to the Secretary of State. It is a non-discretionary duty on the board to go ahead and take that action.
So one of the things...
Vice Chair Surdy?
Yes, go ahead.
McClure here. To be clear, that we only canvass the state and federal and county issues. We do not canvass the municipal elections.
Supervisor...
That is up to the cities to do.
Yep. Supervisor Surdy, Chairman McClure, that is absolutely correct. The results do get transmitted over to the cities and towns for them to do their own canvassing by their clerk of their city or town.
Correct. Any more comments from anyone on the phone at this time?
Supervisor Kavanaugh.
Yes. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman. For Chris Keller, it's my recollection that the canvass needs to occur between 6 or 20 days, or is that for only a special election?
That is correct. No, it is for, as you said, for special elections. The statute reads, and it's ARS 16645B, the Board of Supervisors shall deliver the canvass to the Secretary of the State within 10 days after the primary election.
Thank you. And what action can a citizen take legally if they were denied the opportunity to vote? Would that occur prior to the canvass, or can that occur after a canvass?
That should have occurred prior to the canvass, and that should have occurred during the election process. Afterward, it could be, and I say could be considered moot by the court if someone brings an action at that point. Because, timing is, as everyone here is aware, is very critical and essential for elections. And, the case law basically states that, time is of the essence in an election. Just as there are only certain time periods for someone to bring a ballot challenge that has to be done within so many days. So, likewise, a challenge to how the election might have proceeded or how it was handled should have been done, more timely.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
And of course, one of the things that sticks in our craw is we think that some people were not given the opportunity to vote. We don't know if it's 10 or 1,000, and we're not sure how we can figure that out. I also want to remind everyone that on Wednesday the 17th, we're having a special meeting just to discuss election issues, and we want to hear from poll workers, people that we, try to break down what happened, not only in this August 2nd, but also in the first, when the early ballots went out too. That's all going to be discussed, and everyone will have a chance to weigh in on that. And I look forward to seeing a lot of answers and questions there as well. So anyone else on the phone have any questions? Virginia, do you have any more explanation or comments?
My only comment is the canvas does reflect all the ballots that were tabulated.
And they all have been tabulated?
Correct.
Okay. Okay, so I will ask for a motion.
Supervisor Surdy?
Yes.
I will make a motion to approve the canvass of the election official results of August 2nd, 2022 primary election.
Is there a second?
McClure here. I second.
We have a second. Natasha, roll call.
Supervisor Kavanaugh,
Aye.
Supervisor Goodman,
Aye.
Chairman McClure,
Aye.
Supervisor Miller,
Aye.
Vice Chairman Surdy presiding as chair.
And I'm also a reluctant aye, but we have no choice. So
That motion passes unanimously.
with that, that's all our business today, and I just want to remind everyone again that on the 17th, we will be discussing this in depth. So at that, we will be adjourned.